Okay, so a description of what I've done to the bike so far. Purchased it as a 67 Triumph. It's going to be a 650 bobber frame. It was a rolling frame, had the wheels. Purchased a 10 horsepower diesel single cylinder Yanmar clone from eBay seller Newdine. He's local to me here, so I went and could pick up the engine local. I started by mounting the engine to a thick piece of plywood and ran it outside as it came, after adding oil and diesel fuel, obviously. I ran it for about 8 hours under different speeds and different loads, to break it in. After I did that, I drained the oil, cleaned the screen filter on the engine, moved it down here, started with the mounts for the motor. There's some square tube welded right there with a plate going across, and then the front mount is just a 3/8 inch piece of flat bar that I shaped to fit between the frame rails at an angle. You can see the way the motor sits at a slight forward angle. Next, moved to the jack shaft assembly back here. Welded a notched a piece of square tubing for the frame there. I originally had the pillow blocks mounted directly to the plate here, which is tapped for 1/2 inch by 13 threads per inch, grade 8 hardware there. The issue that I ran into was I had it 12 inches on center when I originally did it, mounted that way. Comet does not make a 12 inch on center belt. They make a 12 5/8 on center belt. So I'm machining these spacers here out of aluminum, about 5/8 of an inch, and so that's the belt that I use there. Both the driven and the driver are both Comet brand. They're not the Chinese knockoff. I got lucky on eBay and found original Comet driven and driver CVT. The jack shaft is 3/4 inch with industrial pillow block. The exhaust here was the next thing that I did. I chopped off the original muffler there. It's 1 inch EMT conduit, and I actually sanded off all the galvanizing before I weld. That's very important to keep from getting that breathing in those fumes from the galvanized, because it'll kill you if you get a direct hit of it. Let's see. The sprocket on here is a 12 tooth. Also have a 13 and a 11 that I purchased. This actually worked out really well. Might change the sprockets around to see what it changes, but the sprocket and the pillow blocks and the chain I got from an industrial supplier. It's a 50 series chain. The rear sprocket is just the original sprocket that was on the bike. Works great. It was the same. It was a 50 series sprocket, so that worked out great. The exhaust is going to have heat wrap on it, so I'm going to clean up those welds and stuff. I did them with the MIG before I had my argon for my TIG. So next I made this footrest, whatever you want to call it. Just some Dom tubing that I cut and made some brackets for and welded together. Then moved to the tank. The tank is, I want to say, 1/8 inch steel. I'm trying to remember what I did with it. I can't remember, but just a pipe fitting there on top with a cap. Works well. I cut a couple 1/4 inch NPT bungs on here, and cut them down on the lathe and tapped them and welded them in for this sight, so you can see where the fuel level is on the tank. Underneath is this is actually a fuel return from the injector, and it goes up and goes all the way up to here, and is open on top, but it's right at the top. That way the excess fuel can go up and empty into the tank. The outlet for the tank is there, and then the mount is right there. All the wiring is, well, most of the wiring is run through the frame in here for the headlight, tail light. Comes out underneath the seat here. You have your tail light wiring. You have your headlight power wiring comes out down there. I made a little bracket here for the switch, on and then crank, and then this is your headlight and tail light switch. So you can run it with the headlights and tail lights or without. I did this because of the battery capacity and the power that a diesel motor takes to start. I wanted to be able to crank it before I had the lights running. Modifications to the throttle bracket. I cut a piece here to basically be a throttle stop. This is a 3/8, I want to say 16 thread per inch bolt that I cut the head off of and drilled out the middle on the lathe. I cut this piece down right here and cut a notch in it, cut a groove right there. So essentially it holds, I can adjust it and it holds the throttle stop where the idle would be. To kill the engine, you pull the pin, pull up on the thing here, you can see the pin moves up, and then you can insert the pin back, press down on the thing, and the idle will be there. The battery is a 210 cold cranking amp, I think it's a 12 amp hour Scorpion battery, 6 gauge ground, 6 gauge running to the running up to the battery post up there. Let's see if I can get a good shot of it. Running to the battery post there, and then running down underneath the motor. The seat pan I made from, I believe I made the seat pan from 1/8 inch. The tank was actually made from a little bit thinner. I'm not sure which size I used. Used a piece of square tubing here and a piece of flat bar there. Welded it all together for the hinge mount. Bent the seat pan over a big pipe to get that shape. And I took some studs. I had some wheel studs I had laying around and welded them there for the pins. The springs are held in by, well, there's a nut there, but there's a pin so you can pull them out if you need to. Set it down on there. These are 1/4 inch by 20 thread per inch by 1/2 inch long with nylon locking nuts. I got some medium density closed cell neoprene foam and some super, I think 77 adhesive. Laid the foam down on the seat, sprayed it, sprayed the glue, pressed it down there, let it dry. And I started shaping the foam with some sandpaper, a knife, and a I guess you call it like a cheese grater for wood. The leather I actually scavenged from an old couch that I had here, and did that, cut it out, and popped all the holes and ran the bolts through, and turned out pretty nice actually. The taillight bracket I made, and the tag bracket and everything, just a piece of steel here that I bent and popped some holes in there to save a little bit of weight because it was pretty heavy. These are 30-06 rounds. I reload my own ammo, so I drilled through the primer seat, not the primer, of course primer was out, and threaded it 1/4 20, which is what these bolts are back here. Yeah. This is also a YZ400F throttle assembly that I had laying around here. It was beat up somewhat, so I took it off the YZ that was here, and I'm just running it on here. It's a dual cable push puller. I'm just using the pull cable right now. I'm going to disconnect the push cable. As for finish up on the wiring here, have of course the wiring that came with it, the regulator there, I guess the regulator rectifier, And then the wiring come up through the frame, attaches there. And then on the back of the switch here, have everything coming up for the ignition, or for the starter, for the headlight, for the tail light, and that's about it.